Hello, Borda. Good morning. Welcome to session 3 of our AI sessions. We have looked at so far sort of introducing and getting an idea around what artificial intelligence is, how that can be used in the classroom, some of the benefits and some of the risks that may come around within your school. We've also then focused on, in the second session, developing sort of our guidance and our policy around how artificial intelligence should be implemented in your school, and the key messages in that being that we're not just going to jump straight into using AI without really understanding the risks around the use of AI, making sure the data security is there, and that we're not just signing ourselves up to different tools without checking the safety of them. So today's session 3, is all going to be about then how you as an educator can use AI to benefit you in your role. And we're going to look at how we can become effective at prompt crafting or prompt engineering when using generative AI tools. Now, as always, following the session, if you do have any questions or you'd like any further support using some AI tools or anything digital, my contact details are there. Please do feel free to reach out and get in contact, and I'll be more than happy to help you and your school. So considering today's agenda and the success criteria is going to be very simple today, and it's going to be considering how we can effectively prompt a generative AI system. Okay, so we're going to be thinking about the ways we prompt them, the words that we use, and how we can structure a prompt to really get from the generative AI systems exactly what we are looking for. So that's what we're going to focus on throughout this morning's session. But before we do that, if you are using AI already, it'd be great to hear in the chat box just some examples of how you are currently using AI to support you and your role. So I'll just give you 30 seconds to pop some ideas or answers into the chat on how you've been using AI to support yourself in your role at this current time. Some nice ideas coming through. So yeah, we've got some writing some social stories to support learners in the school, which is a fantastic way of using AI to support that in the classroom. Creating a waggle for writing, for extended writing, using the Adobe text to image features to create their own bridge hotels for a persuasive article, comprehension questions, translations of texts, differentiating text for lower reading ages, activity ideas, text to art, making a basic model answer to show the class, but adapting to suit the needs. Fantastic. Magic schools to help with resources and reading support. Yeah, lovely. Chili challenges, planning for learning, assessment, differentiation. And I think Elise has just got one more idea coming through, and Wes as well. Supporting learning information using more creative activities, helping with pupil speaking presentations. And then for teachers, curriculum use mainly, modelled writing, smart targets, class assemblies, helping to write letters for families, for learners, and generating specific images. So yeah, lots of fantastic ways that AI can be used to support you in your role. And I think one of the key things it can do is really help you kind of cut down on some of the things that we have to do on a day-to-day basis. Some great examples in there around like creating a waggle of an extended write. Now, how often do we spend that time trying to write one ourselves or find one on the internet, where now we can use the AI tools to really support us in that, to cut down the amount of time we're doing that, so we can actually focus on teaching and learning in the classroom, creating exciting resources, and really supporting all of the children that are within our care. So some great examples there, and I'm hoping as we go through today's session, you will become a bit more experienced in crafting to get real quality responses from the generative AI systems that we are going to be focusing on and using. So before we get around to that, and I think it's just really important to circle back to the impact AI is going to have on education. I think this quote here sums it up, that AI offers immense potential to enhance education by personalizing learning experiences, automating tasks, and providing valuable insights to us as educators on the attainment and the achievement of the learners in our classroom. And I think AI models now are advancing so rapidly and dramatically that they are going to provide us that immense potential to really change teaching and learning in the classroom. And I think also on top of that, AI can empower you as educators to create engaging, innovative and inclusive environments for learners while helping them to prepare for the future. So I think this is going to be a real shift in the global landscape around AI, and I hope this can have that support for you in your classrooms too. So what are the kind of opportunities available to us in terms of AI in education? And I think although AI has already been used to boost inclusivity and productivity, recent advancements in AI will offer us the opportunity now to reimagine solutions to long-standing challenges in our classrooms at a time when they are perhaps needed the most. Now, I think it's inspiring really to consider the opportunities we have to maximise the transformative potential of AI in a variety of ways, such as developing new learning tools, providing an aid for creating content, building AI literacy, improving student services, simplifying scheduling if you're doing anything around timetabling, and so much more. Now, I would advise you sort of evaluating all the opportunities with AI based on your top needs and objectives. As demonstrated here on this diagram, AI here can have an impact whether you're looking to accelerate learning, improve efficiency, or prepare students for the future. So that diagram really sums up that whilst we might only think about creating certain things, there is a huge amount of things that we can do now with AI to support us in the classroom. Now, there are a number of different AI tools available to you in schools. My kind of go-to as a chat GPT style thing is Microsoft Copilot. Now, for those of you who've not used Copilot before, Copilot is Microsoft's GPT system. It runs on GPT-4 and is also free to you to access and use. And what's great about Copilot is that it will search results from across the web. It will summarize responses to the prompt-specific questions and needs. It then provides links to the content sources so that you can go and do that validity check on whether that content is the right content to be using, and also it allows you to be creative. So those of you who've not seen Copilot or used Copilot before, it's again a free tool for you to use. It runs on GPT-4. So ChatGPT will run on 3.5. Copilot is running on GPT-4. So it's got that extra bit of power and tools around it as well. What you can also do with it is you can ask it follow-up questions. So you can ask it to explain things in simpler terms, and you can ask for it to give you more options as you're going through as well. It would also, and we'll demonstrate this in a little bit, suggest questions to you that you might want to ask to further your understanding or to develop your prompts a little bit further as well. So when we do some of the demos during this morning's session, I'm going to be using Copilot. But if you want to be using either ChatGPT, sorry, or Google Gemini, then that is your choice. It's entirely up to you and what you're comfortable and confident with using. If you do choose to use Copilot, you can access it in 5 different places, and they are up on the screen there. There is a mobile app. You can go straight to copilot.microsoft.com. You can also go to bing.com/chat. On some devices now, Copilot is accessible as a sidebar and as a Windows option as well. So lots of accessibility, and they're building it now into all of the different Office apps as well. So you can have it sitting alongside PowerPoint and doing the work alongside you too. The other great thing about Copilot is whilst it will keep a history of your conversations, your personal data is not being collected and is only used as needed and retained no longer than necessary because it was built with privacy in mind. Now, if you are signed in to Copilot, you can use the privacy dashboard to manage the data that is collected by the Copilot chat. So for example, you can delete the product and service usage data, and you can play around with the different stored conversations that are available to you as well. The key thing with the enterprise version, the chat data isn't saved and it's used to train, it isn't used to train the AI models. And the final thing there, I think is the key part, is that Microsoft can't view the chat data either. So when you're choosing your GPT model, your AI model, it's important to know how the data is shared with that model, how the data is viewed, and whether it is being stored and shared in other places. So make sure that you've read some of the terms and conditions around the use of some of those tools before that you use them. And I think the key thing to remember when we're using AI tools, and particularly when we're prompting, is that AI can make mistakes. And it's really, really important that we use our expertise and judgment. We double check facts and link sources before we make decisions or taking actions. And it's important that we report inappropriate or inaccurate content using the flagging features that are available on each of the tools that are there. So that's just a little bit of a background on Copilot and how useful it is. Like I said, I'm not a salesperson for Microsoft, so if you want to use any of the other tools today, then you're more than welcome to do so. Copilot is my one of choice because I know it's safe and I know it's really accurate in what it provides me. So we're going to move on to now having a look at effective prompting and Promptcraft. And for those of you who may not have heard the term Promptcraft before, it is basically the skill of being able to ask AI the right questions in order to get the response that you need. And this is a really, really important skill for you as educators to be able to get the content that you want, but also as our older learners start accessing and using AI a little bit more, then they need to be able to ask the right questions and prompt the machines in the correct way to get the responses that they need. Another way of looking at it, and the term you may have heard, is prompt engineering. And I suppose prompt engineering can be broken down into these kind of three key areas here. So why do we do prompt engineering? So the way you prompt an LLM affects its output. So LLM stands for a large language model. The words you use, the order of the words, the way the request is made, and more can impact a LLM's output. So this is why prompt engineering is important. Now, the right prompting will lead us to a better output, and we'll look at different ways and different models that we can use as we go through today's session to help us frame and create prompts that get us the most efficient and effective outputs as well. Now, this is a really interesting graphic that came from the website AI for Education. So that's aiforeducation.io if you want to have a look around there. Lots of interesting webinars and resources and some posters like this that you can use to support development of your staff. But they identified the top 5 mistakes that educators make when thinking and using AI. Now, the top 5, as you can see there, so using Gen AI like a search engine. Okay, so just asking an open-ended question and not really connecting the internet and having much kind of connection between what they're asking. Stopping after one prompt. So they just put in a prompt, they get a response, and then they leave it. They don't actually then modify and change that to fit your context and to really give you an effective output. People don't check for hallucinations or bias. So it is imperative to check for those inaccuracies or hallucinations that they're called and biases as well. People think that things like GPT-0, which is an AI detector, work. There's lots of studies out there to say that people have written papers for university. They've been passed through an AI detector like GPT-0, and it's saying that they have used AI when they haven't, and there's been tests out there to prove that that is the case. And I think the other key thing here is that lots of people aren't open to experimenting with AI as well. So really top 5 things that we kind of want to get away from, and today we're going to focus on making sure that when we use our generative AI prompting, we're not going to be using it like a search engine, and we're not going to stop after that one prompt. We're really going to think about how we can develop and define our prompts as we go through as well. So at this point in the session, you might want to open up and make sure that you have available to you one of those 3 tools there. And we're just going to start off with, nice and slowly, doing some basic prompting to get us some responses that we're looking for. So what I've done is I've essentially come up with some common sort of education-oriented requests. And you feel free to make your own as we go through this point, but we're going to start off at a basic level. So a couple of really simple things. If we want to go really basic level, this is what I'm going to ask AI to do for me. Is I could ask it to create me an outline of a book. I could ask it to list some ideas to me around a science lesson. I could ask it to summarize the key events of a historical event or anything that you could think of. And I could also ask it to design a lesson for teaching about a topic or context or idea. So they are very, very basic prompt starters that I could use. Now, if I place those into my generative AI tool, I'm going to get out a very generic, simple response. I'm not going to get exactly what I'm looking for when thinking about creating content for my learners. So just to provide an example of what that might look like across the 3 tools, I asked the 3 different tools exactly the same prompt. So in Copilot, I asked it to create an outline of the story, The Jungle Book. And this is the response that I got. So you can see here that it's broken the response down into the 7 different sections. It's provided me with some images that link to the different parts of the story here. It's also provided me with some links out to information as well. And the other great thing about the Copilot tool as well is it gives you then the links to the websites and the sources that it got that information from. So now, as an educator or someone using the tools to prompt, I can now double check to see if that information is true, is factual, and is correct. So if I was on Copilot now, I could click onto one of these links. It would take me to that website and I could have a little look just to make sure that the content that is created for me is in fact correct. So you can see there, that is one response. Now I took that exact same prompt, create an outline of the story for the Jungle Book, and this time, I asked ChatGPT, and this is the response that ChatGPT gave me. So you can see it's kind of broken it down into different sections again, but this time it's more kind of like a bulleted response with no images or no links to where that information came from. Now, checking back between the 2, I can see that the information they've given me is fairly similar, so I can be pretty sure that that information is correct, but obviously I'm not getting a huge amount of detail from this response either. And then finally, exactly the same prompt then for Google Gemini. Similarly, again, it's broken it down into the different sections. It's given me bulleted answers and different content, but again, no images or no links for me to be able to check how effective that response is. So that's just a quick compare and contrast of the different tools that are available to you and how it can provide you similar information, but again, formatted in different ways. So you choose the tool again, which you are most comfortable using. So what I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to head over to ChatGPT, Google Gemini, or to Copilot, whichever one you are happy to do. Choose one of these prompts, doesn't matter which one, and where it's got the squared brackets off there, put in your own response. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to just prompt it with a very simple prompt, and then in the chat box, if you could put your prompt in and then paste in the response that your tool has given you, please. So just 2 minutes to choose one of those very basic prompts, to put that into the chat and then paste your response in, please. A couple of ideas coming through now, which is great. So you can see there, Sally, design a lesson for teaching romantic poetry. It's given us some titles, objectives, a target audience, the materials needed, and a lesson plan that's broken down into 6 sort of parts. Karis has some engaging science lesson ideas around the orbits of the planet. Again, you can see it's broken down into 4 parts, and it's given some links out to different websites and ideas of how that could be used. We've got David, who's gone for an outline of The Hobbit. Well, crikey, ChatGPT must have done a good job of outlining that, because I certainly couldn't do it. And then we've got design a lesson about privilege. Sorry, white privilege there. So again, ChatGPT giving us a title, an objective, materials, some work on Henry VIII, an outline of the play of Blood Brothers. So you can see very, very quickly, thank you everyone for popping in your kind of responses there. You can see very, very quickly that we are able to generate that content, are we, straight away. But what I can see particularly straight away, just as a quick overview, is we've had a look through. Yes, we've kind of got that outline of the different things we want, or it's created us some science lessons, or it's created us a lesson on romantic poetry. But what it hasn't done now, what we haven't been able to do, is really define who that lesson is for. And what the purpose of that lesson is and the kind of things you're trying to get out from that lesson. So I want you to keep your original prompt in mind, because we're going to try and iterate that now and make that prompt a little bit more effective so you get a clear understanding or a clear response from your chat models. Okay. So we are going to now think about how we can iterate those prompts and make them a bit more effective and useful as we're creating the prompts. So we're going to look at the 4 elements really of an iterative prompt, and then I'm going to give you like a prompt engineering framework that I find really useful. There are others out there, but you might want to use the one I share with you, or you might want to go find your own. So for the best experience with an AI generated response, you should start with something that we call an iterative prompt. The more specific you are about what you're looking for, the better the result. So an iterative prompt should include the following elements. It should have some form of persona. So you should be asking your tool to take on a role. Okay, so giving it that persona so it understands who it is and what it's actually trying to do. The next thing you should do is give it an objective. Tell that tool exactly what you want it to generate. The more detailed you are, the better the response you are going to get. From those basic prompts that we looked at, because they were quite broad and quite generic, we got quite generic responses. We might want to, taking Fion's example of Blood Brothers as an example, we might need to focus specifically on Act 1. And we might want to focus on superstition within Act 1. So what different things happen within Act 1 that demonstrate superstition? I'm going back and digging deep into my Blood Brothers knowledge here, Fiona, around the shoes upon the table is the one thing that I always think about when I remember that. After we've given it an objective, we then need to consider and think about its audience. So we need to specify who that content is actually for. So what those generic prompts don't do for us is, as an example, go on the Blood Brothers one again, that would be a GCSE text, I would assume. I could be wrong. But we need to then specify that the resources that you're creating are for pupils who are in year 10 and they are in a Welsh secondary school. So something along those lines. So you're being really specific about who that content is for. And then we need to create a boundary. We need to set the limitation and give it directions on the responses that we're trying to create. So that is a kind of 4-step process to creating an iterative prompt. Now I find this framework here, the prep machine, a really useful tool for helping me think about creating my prompts. So AI prompt skills will include the ability to create a high quality requests that can guide the AI algorithm to generate your desired response. With a good prompt skill, you can create engaging and personalized learning experiences for learners, identifying solutions to repetitive tasks or to generate and create new ideas. Now, I've spoken about Dan Fitzpatrick in some of the earlier sessions. He has kind of worked on and developed this model. It's again seen by lots of different places, but this is the one I'm going to use. And he talks about using prep to help us frame the prompts that we're going to create for our model. So what I'm going to do now is almost go through stage by stage how I might take the Jungle Book prompt that I originally had and make it more effective and more efficient to get out what exactly I want from the generative AI machines. So I'm going to start off with my prompt. I'm going to introduce the question to my generative AI with a prompt. So my prompt is going to be, I'm going to ask the AI tool to create an overview of the story, The Jungle Book. So I'm going to exactly ask it what I need it to do. I'm then going to give it a role. So I'm going to ask it, well, I'm not going to ask it, I'm going to tell it. I'm going to tell it that it's a primary school teacher working with a group of year 6 children in Wales. So now it has that role, it understands who it's thinking about and what it's generating that prompt for. Then I'm going to be explicit with my instructions. So I wanted to create me an overview of the story that is no more than 250 words. So I don't want reams and reams of overview. I don't want it in bullet points. I want a really concise overview of that story. Finally, then I need to set the parameters. So I'm going to ask it to write an overview with a reading age of around 10 years of age. And I want it to focus on British English. I also wanted to include some questions at the end of the overview that I could ask learners to help them to develop their higher order thinking skills. So I've taken that prompt, and what I've done now is just from going from creating an overview, I've then iterated that prompt now to make it have a role. So I wanted to be a primary school teacher working with year 6 in Wales. I want it to be explicit around it's 250 words and no more. And I want it to be written with a reading age of 10 years of age in mind. And I want it to give me some questions that develop higher order thinking. So if you remember back to that initial prompt that I put into Microsoft Copilot that looked a little bit like this. General overview gave me some ideas. When I put that prompt now back into Copilot, it then created this for me. So you can see now the difference between the two prompts that have been created. So you can see now I've got an overview of the Jungle Book. It's thought about the reading age and the vocabulary and the text that's being used. It's thought about how exciting the content is being read. So you can see there, just down after the third paragraph, it's kind of changed the way it's speaking. So, but wait, there's more. So it's given the reader, it's a bit more exciting and engaging to read. And then it's also given me then some questions that I might want to ask my learners afterwards. So I've really now taken that initial prompt and I've made it more explicit, and it's given back to me a more detailed response based around what I need it to do. So what I'd like you now to do is I'd like you to think back to that prompt that you initially put into your GPT tool. And I'd like you now to iterate that prompt using the PrEP framework there. So as an example, where Liz had summarized the key events around Henry VIII, what I'd like you to do now, Liz, is to really think about your prompt, the person you are generating it for, so give it a role, be explicit about the response that you want it to give you, and then set some parameters as well. So you might want it to generate some multiple choice questions about the overview. You might want it to give you a synopsis. You might want it to take on the role of Henry VIII and talk as if it's Henry VIII in role. So think about now how you can iterate that prompt to give you something more explicit and that's more useful for you in the classroom. So this might take you a little bit of time to think about. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to play around with that prompt, and then if you could then paste your prompt and your response into the chat for me, please. Fantastic. Okay, so lots of really good examples there. And if you do get time to kind of go back through and read through the chat on some of the examples that people have put in, you can see the differences in terms of the way people have prompted the machines and the responses that have been given. So some of you have kind of got it broken down into different timings, which is really useful. Some of you have chosen multiple choice questions. Others have kind of got it broken down into comprehension questions. I think Stuart had a really nice one talking about Kensuke's Kingdom, where he asked it to generate questions related to choices within the book as well, and it's kind of given some discussion questions for the children to think about. So when you're thinking about, when you're working with texts or you're generating ideas for guided group reading, or you're doing kind of retrieval practice, this is going to kind of give you some of those responses. Now, what I will say with this, and I think it's a word of warning whenever we use any of these AI tools, and I said right near the start of this session, is that AI can make mistakes. And we need to use our professional judgment. We need to read through that content, and we need to make sure that what it has generated for us is true and is factual. That's really important. It's a skill for us. It's also a skill for the children to learn about as well when we start to introduce these tools later on in their education. So really important things to think about and consider when using these tools. What I will say was just to jump on a bit, I've created some examples then around some of the different things you might do at each phase. So just to go through each stage of the PrEP framework again. So the prompt is the first step when framing your request. But by providing that prompt, what you are doing is you're setting the scene and creating a foundation for the rest of your instructions. At this point, be clear and concise, as AI language models are not great at understanding some of our sort of human nuances. Avoid using vague or ambiguous language that could confuse your AI tools. Now, we spoke about some of those 5 mistakes around the use of AI, and most people will stop at this stage. Now, this is step 1. Here you're providing that context for the rest of your instructions, and you can see some examples there of how you could prompt your machine when you're using it. Now, when we think about giving it a role, that's a crucial aspect of asking your questions when using this framework. When you assign your AI tool a role, you are giving it a clear understanding of what you want it to accomplish. The importance of giving your AI tool a role cannot be overstated at this point. Without it, it may not fully understand the context of the request or your expectations when generating the response. Again, some examples there on the screen of how you could give it a role, going from being an experienced teacher to a health and safety expert, or actually putting your AI tool in role as a character or as a person. Then we need to be explicit and clear about what we want our AI tool to do or what information we are looking for. Don't assume at this point it knows what you're thinking or what you need. If you give vague instructions or don't provide enough information, it may ask you some follow-up questions to clarify what you need or simply give you an under par response. This can lead to a longer interaction than necessary. And remember, we're trying to use these tools to save us a bit of time. By being specific from the outset, you can ensure that it will provide you with the information you need as quickly and as accurately as possible. So again, you can see some examples here of how you could be explicit, referencing things like Bloom's taxonomy. You could put in exam questions and the marking schemes. You could ask it to respond in a particular way. So give it in a table with 3 columns and then give each of your columns a title. So be really explicit about what you want it to do. Now, the last part is that examples bit, the parameters. Setting clear parameters is the crucial last step in asking your AI tool the optimal question. It means defining the scope and the boundary of the answer, which helps it understand what you're looking for, whilst enabling it to provide a more accurate response. The aim is to be in control of the response, and without those clear parameters, the AI tool will take control. So really, really important that we use this prep framework to help us frame our answers to get exactly what we want from the tools itself. Now, when you're considering some of the variables or parameters, these are the kinds of things, again, that you might want to consider. So the tone of your response, the language, the word length, the amount of paragraphs, the length of your sentences, the sentiment, the format or the reading age, are just some things to consider when you're setting your parameters for your model as well. So we've had some goes and some examples there of how we can use that prep framework. Please do play around with it, prep it with different things and see what you get afterwards. Now, when we go back to Dan Fitzpatrick's model, the prep framework, the second part of that then was the edit part. Okay, this is the output, and this is the bit where we start thinking about whether that information is valid or correct or not. So by analysing the text structure, language and evidence, what you can do is determine whether the information is factual or not. What you will need to do is ensure the generated content aligns with the intended message and the purpose. You will need to check for grammatical, spelling and punctuation errors to maintain that professionalism. So don't just take what it creates and chuck it up onto your school website or into resources. We still need to do a little bit of that quality assurance process. And we probably need to think about confirming that all the presented facts are accurate and supported by reliable sources. Now, what Fitzpatrick, Fox and Weinstein have done is they've given a little bit of a framework and some questions that for you might want to consider when evaluating your AI responses. And again, if you're doing this with older learners in the school as well, and they're using some AI tools in the future, then these are the kinds of questions you might want to ask them in terms of evaluating the AI's response to make sure that it is correct, it's factual, it's not biased, and it doesn't have any of those hallucinations or incorrect information as we go through. So just to wrap up this little section, really, just a reminder really on effective prompting for educators. You can see there the scale of less effective to more effective, but I think clarity is key. Explicitly state what you would like your model to do. The more specific your prompt, the more accurate and tailored your AI's response will be. General prompts will result in general responses. You need to make sure that you pick the right prompting technique. You may be able to get what you need from one well-structured prompt, which is what we call one-shot prompting. But there are other techniques too. You can provide examples in your prompt to guide the AI's responses, or you could cut down your requests into steps. So chunk your thing. First, I need you to do this, then I need you to do that. And that's what we call chain of thought prompting. We need to make sure we provide context. Okay, the chatbot is called a context window for a reason. Give AI as much necessary background information as possible. This will help it prepare a response that fits your needs. And then finally, format matters. A well-structured prompt guides the AI in understanding the exact nature of your request. Use clear and direct language and structure your prompt logically. So that's how you can kind of use an AI generative tool to give you some text responses. But we also know, and we mentioned it earlier, that there are some image creation tools as well. And these are fantastic. And we do have an image creation tool available within Hub, which is free, under the Adobe Express tools. Now, the great thing that is about the Adobe Firefly tool within Hub, because it's been built for education, okay, it won't allow any images to be created that are going to be a bit of a shock to you as an educator in the classroom. As you're prompting the image creation tool in Adobe Firefly, if it picks up a word that is inappropriate or incorrect, it will stop it from creating an image, and you'll get a little red box at the bottom to say that that has come through too. So what we're going to do now is we're going to jump over to Adobe Express. I'll just come off here and share my screen so everyone can see. Okay, we're going to jump over to the Adobe Express tools. If you've not used them before, when you log into your Hub account, you'll get the Adobe Express icon on your main page, and then you can click on to Adobe Express, which will give you this beautiful looking landing page. Now, once you've got to here, you can do it in a number of ways. You can scroll down and you can click text to image just by here, or you could just create a graphic in the top right hand corner, which will take us through to our kind of landing page. Now, once you're on your sort of creation page here and you're on the all-in-one editor, you've got your tools down the left hand side, and then you've got your banner across the top. I'm just going to resize my banner so that it is a square. And I've got a nice square canvas to work on in the middle of the screen just by here. Now on the left hand side, if I just come down to the media option by here, you can see now that I have the photos, the videos and the audio. So under photos, I can upload an image from my device, or I can click on this text to image option just by here. So I'm just going to click on to text to image. I'm going to ask it to create me a square, and then I'm going to prompt now my image generator to create me anything that I like. Now, I find this really useful. If you think about the amount of times you've tried to find an image for setting a scene or for children to write about, or an image prompt, and you spent hours looking through Literacy Shed or on Google, you can now create an image based off your own prompts. But what we're going to do is a little bit of fun to round off this session, is we're all going to put in a similar prompt to our image creation, and we're going to pop those images then into the chat. So the prompt I would like you to focus on is, I would like you to, and you might want to write this down, or if you're on the image creation bit, you can. I would like you to choose your favorite color and your favorite animal to start off with. So I'm going to go for red lion. Okay, so I'm just going to go for a red lion. And then I'm going to ask you to choose a feeling or emotion. And I'll pop the prompt into the chat as well, so you can see in a second. So I'm going to go for a red lion, feeling excited about his holiday. I'm going to choose a weather. He is sat on a sandy beach under a golden sun. Sat is a bit boring, so we're going to go for he is dancing on a sandy beach under a golden sun. Thank you, Sally. That's really kind of you. Thank you. So yes, I'm going to put a prompt in there. So I'm going to choose a favorite color in an animal, a feeling or emotion, a type of weather, or a scene or an action. So I'll just pop that into the chat for you so you can see that as well, so you can help you to prompt it. Now, once I've put my prompt into the image generator, I can choose the type of content that I wanted to create. So I can either ask it to create a photo, a graphic, or some art. So I'm going to stick with art. And then under the style section, I've got some different styles that I can choose. So I've got different types of popular options. I can look at different types of movement. So you can see I've got steampunk, pop art, cubism, and so on. I've got different themes, so I can go for some pixel art. I could go for graffiti. And then I've got different techniques as well. So I've got painting, splattering, oil painting, watercolor, and so on. So what I'm going to do is I am going to choose a theme. So I'm going to go for a graffiti theme, and I'm going to go for a bold lines approach. So once I've chosen my styles, you don't have to choose any styles if you don't want to. I'm going to click the generate button, and then what my AI prompt will then do is it will generate me an image. Here we go. So here is my red lion feeling excited about his holiday, dancing on a beach in a graffiti style with some bold lines. I've clicked on the image, which is a bit of a pain, but you will have 3 or 4 different options then that you can choose from. So what I'd like you to do, just for a little bit of fun to wrap up this session, is to pop your prompt into the chat, into the image generator, create that image, and then I would like you to copy and paste your image then into the chat for everybody to see. So I'll just give you 2 minutes to generate that image and pop it over. You can also, if you'd like to, put your prompt into the chat as well. And this is really a nice activity to do with your learners as well, just to get them thinking about how they can prompt it to create an image that they like. If they're not happy with their image, then they need to go back, they need to edit their image and pop it in again. You can also create the images. The children can create the images, and then you could ask the children to think about what prompt they put into the image generator to create that image, so they can reverse it and they can think backwards. So as an example, Elise has gone for I'm going to say a purple panda eating some bamboo, feeling surprised, or is it yawning? I'm not sure. But you could ask the children to kind of then look at the image and reverse engineer it to think about the prompt that was placed into the tool as well. So it starts them thinking critically about it, but it also develops computational thinking as well. So they're having to break it down and think about those different things too. Again, the children can do, and you can as well. If you're not happy with the image, go back, change your prompt slightly, and see then if it generates an image for you. Now, the great thing about the images that are created in Adobe Firefly is they are unique to you. Okay, all of the images within Firefly are created from a bank of copyright-free images or stock images, so there's no issues around copyright or anything like that. In some tools, I know Microsoft Designer, there's a bit of a thing at the moment around the use of the imagery and copyright around logos and so on as well. By putting in your final images and your prompts, we're just going to kind of round off today's session. We're just thinking about why prompting skills are important to you, but also important to our children as well. And I think this is a recent piece of information from the Work Trend Index in 2023. And they talked about how basically now we've been told that organizations, businesses are looking for people with AI skills. So not just being on to things that have already been built and just putting in something, them actually being able to manipulate and use AI to generate things that they are interested in. Business leaders have basically told Microsoft that they are looking for people who know when to use AI or human intelligence, looking for people who know how to ask the right questions or write great prompts. They're looking at people who are able to evaluate critically creative outputs from AI and have the flexibility to rethink their work, including redesigning their workflow using AI. So I think the data is clear. As work evolves with AI, we need to evolve too. And I think every professional, not just AI experts, will need a new core competency, such as prompt engineering in their day-to-day work. And just to kind of round off, I saw this on LinkedIn the other day and I thought it was really, really important. There are some great tools out there. I've seen some fantastic use of tools such as TeachMate AI and Magic School, which have kind of got pre-built frameworks for you to use. But I think this quote here from Ryan Tenenbaum was really, really important. He said, in the long run, some of these templates are going to hurt learners and hurt us as educators. The difference between someone who builds and iterates their own prompts versus somebody who consumes output from a wrapper is one of agency. If we don't teach our staff and students to leverage AI when they need it, they can only use it in cases that it conforms to them. They're not drivers of the process, they are recipients of a tool. They're not using AI to more deeply engage, they are learning to be helpless to the magic of AI. So we should help our teachers and our staff to create prompts that work for you in your school and your organization. So let's be creative, let's teach staff and let's teach learners how to be effective at prompting so that they don't just use the tools that are generated for them. Let's make them creators of that content as well. So in terms of what you could do next, again, work with your staff on how they can be effective prompt engineers, but also there are a number of prompt libraries that are available online that you can use to help give you some ideas around how you can generate your prompts a little bit further. One really useful one that I've kind of looked at in the past is this one here from AI for Education. You can see the link there on the screen, but they've got banks and banks and banks of different prompts that you might use to generate an output for your school. So you can use those prompts, modify them for your context, and I think context is king, making sure that you apply that to the context that you need it for, and it will then generate that output for you. So definitely have a look at those prompt libraries and use them to help generate your ideas and your understanding as well. So just to round off today's session, to come back to that success criteria that we talked about at the start, today's session was all about considering how to effectively prompt a generative AI system. We focused on the use of the PrEP framework and how that can create those effective, efficient prompts for us. And I hope that from this session, you've been able to kind of garner a further understanding, some skill and a bit more confidence in the use of the AI tools. So a huge thank you for you to joining us this morning. If you've joined us in the recorded session as well, a huge thank you. Please could I ask you now to just take 2 minutes of your time to fill in the end of session evaluation for today's session, please. For our final session, we have the fourth and final session looking at AI in your curriculum. So that will focus on how we teach about AI for our learners, how we develop computational thinking, and then some of the tools that you can use as part of teaching and learning, but also for your learners as well. So if you'd like to sign up for that session there, the QR code is on the screen. That is the Monday after the Easter break, 1:30 in the afternoon. So just again, a huge thank you to you all for joining us.